Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. And guess what? We're gonna continue our session on teaching aptitude, and today is one of the special sessions called teaching support system. And in exam, they might ask question based on that. So let me tell you, education is a kind of big deal, right? It's like the backbone of our society, shaping minds and futures. And let's be honest, teaching isn't a walk in the park. It's tough to fill those eager, or not so eager brains like your students, right? That's where teaching support systems slide into the picture. Imagine these are some kind of, sidekicks or the cool gadget that make the hero, and the hero is you, the teacher, right? So think of it like this. Back in the day, learning was pretty much limited to our textbooks and also teachers' words. And fast forward now, it's completely changed. Classroom are getting more innovative these days, right? All sorts of kind of aids move from more interactive whiteboards to educational apps on your iPad, right? And these tools aren't just fancy decorations, they are like the bridges connecting students to knowledge in a ways that stick, right? For instance, remember trying to understand the water cycle from a textbook diagram. Now picture learning it through an interactive simulation where you can see the rain forming clouds and falling back to the earth, right? It's like the difference between reading about a cake and actually making one, right? So it's quite important that teaching support system that you should all know about, right? These days, no, society's got this mixed bag of feelings about teaching methods. Some folks are all in kind of old school chalk talk, but others are cheering for the latest tech driven strategy, and then there's the crowd that likes a bit of both. So let's get into the nitty gritty of what makes teaching aids kind of superheroes of the classroom. They're not just a backup dancer to the teacher's lead, they are more like a dynamic duo that makes the learning experience richer. For example, a globe or a map can transform a geography lessons from memorizing names to embarking on a virtual journey across continents. And here's the cool part, teaching aids don't have to break the bank, right? With a bit of creativity, anything from a homemade volcano for a science project to a simple app can become a powerful learning tool, right? It's about making lessons come alive, making sure students not only hear or read the information but feel it, right? And take the teaching of history. It used to be all about dates and events packed into text, right? Now in documentaries or historical fiction podcast, and suddenly what? Not just learning history, you are actually experiencing it, right? It's the difference between reading about the civil rights movement and watching a documentary that puts you right in the midst of those pivotal moments. So these aids do more than just spice up lessons, right? They help tailor the learning experience to fit the class's vibe. They're like the playlist you create for a road trip, right? Carefully selected to keep everyone in the groove, making the journey enjoyable and memorable. Teachers are irreplaceable. You know why? Because they are the ones who bring wisdom, right? Passion and that human touch no gadget can replicate. So, in a nutshell, teaching support systems are, about making learning not just more effective but also more enjoyable. They invite students to explore questions and connect with the material in a way that feels natural and exciting, whether it's through a high tech app or a simple paper, you know, kind of volcano. So the goal is the same, to light up that spark of curiosity and make learning a journey worth taking. Right. So in our next slide, we're gonna talk about traditional teaching support system. You know, so when we talk about the traditional way of teaching, we are basically diving into that old school method, right? Kind of classic setup of learning. Right. So think of it as the master method before all the fancy tech. came into play. This is your classic classroom scene. A teacher, a kind of, have chalkboard, right, and lots of textbooks. It's like the scenes you have seen in a movie set in the past, where everything from the ABCD to Pythagoras theorem is taught, with the teacher doing most of the talking and writing on the board. In this world of traditional teaching, it's pretty much the teacher running the show. They decide what's going to be taught and how. Right? It's like a one man band. So the teaching style leans heavily on lectures. Picture a teacher standing in the front of the class, going on about historical dates or kind of explaining how photosynthesis work. And then there is this memorization part, right? It's all about stuffing as much information into your brain as possible, kind of like cramming your stuff into a suitcase before a trip, right? So the goal to get through the syllabus and spit it all back out where during your exam, right? So when it comes to tools of the trade, it's pretty basic: textbooks and blackboards. It's a bit like cooking with just salt and pepper, right? Fundamental but can be effective, right? So now there are some upside to this also. And what is that? For instance, when you have got a crowd of students, right, lecturing is pretty straightforward. It's like throwing a net. You cover a lot of ground at once. It's simple to roll out any class, and it doesn't burn a hole in the school's wallet also. Plus, the teacher gets to steer the ship entirely, choosing what gets taught and how, right? And but also there is some flip side of it. Students don't get to be in the driver's seat much. You know why? It's more about listening and less about doing, right? Imagine learning to swim without getting into the water. And if you're not great at memorizing stuff, you might find yourself in a kind of tough spot. Evaluating students can also be a headache, since it's not just about ticking the right answer in a multiple choice quiz. Plus, it doesn't really push teachers to reflect on their teaching style. Right, let me paint a picture for you guys. Remember back in school when you had to learn the capitals of all the states? Right, instead of exploring each state through stories or interactive maps, you were probably just told to memorize a list, right? And it happened to every one of us, right? Or think about learning math with just an abacus or worksheet. No cool apps or games to visualize those tricky concepts. It's like learning to cook without ever tasting the food, right? Sure, you know the recipe, but what? Or the flavor, but you don't know actually what it is like. So that's a mystery until the test, right? And let me tell you about another important stuff that all these support system which comes under traditional teaching. The first you see is the chalkboard or blackboard. So as you can see in the picture, we have, and everybody knows about it, we don't have to go much about it, but let me tell you a little bit, right? So remember those black slates that adorned every classroom wall? They weren't just for screeching chalk sounds, but teachers used them for everything from spelling lists to complex math formulas. It's like the ancient form of PowerPoint presentation, but with the more dust, right? Then we have textbook, right? Or the bricks of knowledge. So we have all had that backpack straining experience, right? Kind of, oh, a lot of books on your back, and it was so much difficult, right? So lugging around heavy textbook that cover everything from the mysteries of algebras or the adventure of historical figures. Textbook are, at that time, are the like of Google of the classroom. Long before the internet became a thing, they are the go-to source for diving deep into subject. And then we have visual feasts like charts, pictures, and postures, right? So ever had that kind of moment when a complex concept suddenly made sense after seeing a diagram? That's the power of visual, right? We could see even at that time, right? So teacher are those to bring subjects to life, and like showing the water cycle through a poster that turns science into art, right? So then we have flashcards, flip cards, and worksheets, right? These are the unsung kind of heroes of memorizing and practice. So flashcard was used for quick quizzes, and flip cards for self-testing, and worksheet, well, it is for work, right? And they are like the personal trainer of the education world, getting your brain in shape one exercise at a time. Then we have like science lab, right? And school science labs are where textbook come to life. Remember mixing chemical to see colors changes, or dissecting a frog to discover what's inside, right? It's one thing to read about reactions and anatomy, right? And it's another to see it firsthand. Labs make you feel like a mini scientist, right? Even if you're just burning toast with a magnifying glass. Well, everybody had tried that, right? I did, so I remember. Anyway, then we have like crosswords, puzzles, and also quizzes. So, who doesn't love the challenge of a good crossword or the thrill of acing a quiz? They're like the educational version of video games, boosting your brain power and knowledge without you even realizing it. Plus, there's this added bonus of bragging rights when you finish first, right? Well, and then we have like drama, one act, or kind of a storytelling. Well, at that time it was very important. Ever been so engrossed in a story that you felt like you were part of it? That's the magic of using drama in teaching. It's one thing to read about historical events or literary characters, and then it's another to act them out, right? Suddenly, you're not just learning about Romeo and Juliet, you're trying to figure out how to not make the same mistake they did. Will you make the same mistake? Anyway, leave it. So, next we have like, dictionary, encyclopedia, and references book. You know it, what they are, right? So, before there was instant search, like what we do in Google these days, whatever you have the question, you just Google it. But at that time, there was not that kind of facilities, right? So there were these guardians of knowledge. What? Dictionary, encyclopedias, and reference book, right? And if you need to know the capital of Zimbabwe, what you would do? You'll just go to Atlas and check it out, right? So wondering about the life cycle of a butterfly, what you do? Flip through an encyclopedia and then find about it. So they are the kind of original search engine, right, packed with information for every curious mind, right? Then we have like toys at that time. Remember that abacus, right? So you remember playing with blocks and suddenly understanding fractions, right? Or using an abacus and realizing you're actually doing math. So educational toys kind of make learning feel like playtime, turning complex concept into fun activities. So the whatever aid that we talked about, they are traditional support system. Now let me tell you about the modern support system. So what do you think these are? So these days teaching is all about making sure you, the students, or teacher, are at the center of the learning universe, right? Think back to the last time you worked on a project with your friend, right? And or had a deep chat about the latest Marvel movie and what it really meant, or even when you all threw ideas around, for your group presentation. So that kind of thing was there, and that's the vibe schools are going for now, right? And they're bringing in all sorts of tech goodies like computers, right? And those old school overhead projectors that somehow never die, right? And videos that keep you awake, and then documentaries that make you go, ah, wow, what an awesome documentary it was. Anyway, and these days we have like whiteboards that are way smarter than any of us. So imagine walking into a classroom today. Okay, suppose you have studied in that traditional school that we have, that I studied, right? So if I go these days, in the school, what I see, or imagine yourself walking into a classroom today. It's like walking into a mini tech convention. You have got laptops everywhere, the internet buzzing with info, e-readers that save you from lugging around those back breaking textbooks, right? And games that actually teach you something without even you realizing it. So you know how far education has transformed right now. And don't get me started about the online tests. They are the game changer also, letting you know instantly if you have nailed the material or need to hit the books again, right? Then there is YouTube, right? A gold mine for learning with the videos on literally everything. Then we have MOOCs, right? That massive online courses, right? And then we have apps that turn your phone into a portable classroom. Let's talk about how these modern methods actually work. It's all about getting you to dive in, right? You're not just sitting there zoning out, you're a part of the action. Planning is a key, so teachers need a game plan that spells out what everyone's aiming to achieve. And the tech stuff like using the internet and interactive tools is super important because it's what makes this whole approach work. It's a team effort with everyone throwing in their 2 cents, which means you have actually building knowledge together, right? And not just getting lectured at. And the best part, you get to be creative, try out new things and see what works best for you, right? And now let me tell you some advantage of it. So there are perks also, right? And this way of learning is all about you. It's tailored how you learn best, makes covering the syllabus feel like a breeze because it's so engaging, and seriously it's a lot more fun these days learning. Picture learning about the solar system not by reading a textbook but by exploring space through a virtual reality game or watching a documentary series, right? And suddenly you're not just learning, you are in kind of on an adventure. Well, again, as I told you, there is not always sunshine and rainbows, right? There are some disadvantage of modern system. And what are these? Teachers have to keep up with all the new tech and methods, which can be a lot, right? Because most of us are from old time, we don't know much about these stuff. But as a teacher, we had to be a kind of tech savvy. We need every kind of skill to teach better, right? And sometimes learning too much on tech can make it feel like teachers are more like IT support than educators, right? And if you're working in a college and if you know all these stuff, your superior and others will ask you to do that IT support kind of thing. So it happens, right? And all this cool stuff, it all cost money and a lot of effort to keep it all running smoothly, right? Plus with all the focus on screen and online learning, it can be harder for teachers and students to really connect on a personal level, right? And in the end, what we are talking about is a classroom that's more like a lab, a place where you get to experiment with ideas, tech, and learn in a way that feels right for you, right? And from computers to smart boards and everything in between, education today is about bringing the world into the classroom in the most interactive, engaging way possible. So next time you're zoning out in front of a PowerPoint, remember there's the whole world of learning out there that's meant to be fun, engaging, and totally suited for you. So as you can see over your screen, we have so many modern teaching aids, from computer, internet surfing, laptop, right? We have electric notebook, e-reader, then we have educational games, then online dictionary, there are like Wikipedias, encyclopedias, all this stuff. Then we have online tests, online ebooks, then PowerPoint slides, right? And then we have games, flash educational games, and lessons mostly relied on radio through satellite TV. Then we have educational CDs, DVDs, projector, and then of course we have interactive whiteboard, or also called smart board. So these are the tech right now which are kind of already set up in the classroom. Now let me tell you about the ICT based support system. So you know how we're always on our phones, computers, or some kind of gadget pretty much all the time. Well, that's information and communication technology in action, or in simple ICT. right? It's all about using tech to handle information, like grabbing it, sorting it out, keep it safe, and sharing it with others, right? All through electric media. Nowadays, this tech isn't just handy, it's essential, right? Especially when it comes to learning. Imagine a classroom that's not limited by its four walls. Teachers and students can tap into a massive pool of information and tools to make learning more interactive and fun, right? And this could mean anything from a simple online quiz to getting knee deep in a digital simulation or historical events. It's like having a magic school bus that can take you anywhere, anytime to learn something new. For instance, let's say you're curious about the stars and constellation but live in a city where it's hard to see the night sky clearly, right? So with ICT, you can use an app or a website to simulate stargazing no matter where you are or what time it is, right? Or if you're studying anatomy, instead of just looking at picture in a textbook, you can explore 3D models online, right? Rotating them and zooming in and out different parts of human body. Right. Now think about the power of video conferencing, right? It's not just those work from home meeting, but teachers can bring guest speakers from around the world into their virtual classrooms, or students can take virtual field trip to museum, laboratory, or even other countries without leaving their desks, right? As ICT keeps evolving, it's shaking up the old school style of teaching. Remember the days when learning meant sitting quietly at your desk, listening to the teacher lecture for hours? Those days are fading fast. So, with ICT, education is becoming more about exploring and doing things yourself. Right? It's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually cooking a meal. You learn better by getting your hands dirty. So, teachers are becoming more like guides on the side rather than the sage on the stage, right? They are there to help steer you in the right direction as you navigate through heaps of information and figure things out on your own. So this shift means that both teachers and students need to, kind of up their game, learning new skills and getting comfy with all sorts of digital tools. And the cool part, these tools no don't have to break the bank. There's a ton of free and affordable resources out there that can bring lessons to life, whether it's through interactive software, educational apps, or online platforms. Plus, these tools are designed to make you think and challenge you, pushing you to stretch your brain in new directions. For kids growing up today, using technology in learning is as natural as breathing, right? It's not just about mastering the tech itself, but using it as springboard to dive into all sorts of subjects from math and science to art and history. It's about learning how to learn in the 21st century, picking up skills that will stick with you long after you have left the classroom. All right, let's dive into this in a super chill way and unpack all these tech tools that are making learning cooler and way more fun than just reading from a textbook. Imagine you're sitting in a class and instead of just writing stuff down on paper, you are typing away on a computer or tablet, making your essay and assignment look kind of top notch with word processing programs like Google Docs or MS Word, right? It's like leveling up in a video game where each assignment gets you better at crafting your words and ideas. Then there is the world of blogs. Think of it as your digital diary or a platform where you can shout out your ideas to the world, if not to the world, at least to your classmates, right? And it's like having a conversation with the entire internet where you can share what you're learning, your thoughts on the latest book you have read, or team up on a project without having to be in the same room. Wikis are like building your own encyclopedia with your mates, right? You can throw in all sorts of information on a topic, edit each other's work, and end up with this massive knowledge bank that everyone contributed to. It's like working on a giant puzzle together, but instead of puzzle pieces, you're using facts and research, right? Then there is this email, right? And they are the classic, right? They're not just for asking your teacher for extensions on assignments. It's about learning to communicate like a pro, knowing how to switch up your tone, whether you're emailing your buddy or to the principal. Right, now let's talk about making things look pretty with a web creation, design, and those snaggy drawing programs. Right, imagine you're working on a project about climate change. Instead of just writing about it, you create this cool website or a digital poster with images and graphics that show melting ice caps or pollution, making your project 100 times more powerful. Right, then digital videos take it up to another notch. It's one thing to read about how to solve a math problem, but seeing someone walk through it step by step in a video game changer, right? And it's also a fabulous way to practice your language skills, like recording yourself speaking a new language you're learning and watching it, right? And also to improve apps are like your trusty sidekicks in learning, from quick quizzes on Kahoot or to organizing your schoolwork on Google Classroom. Right, and there's a pretty much an app for everything these days. It's like having this super toolkit at your fingertips, making learning interactive and fun. And the internet, the glorious internet, right? It's your gateway to, well, everything: research, information, connecting with people all over the globe. It's like having the world's biggest library and meeting place all in one. And let's not forget about the basics like word processors, spreadsheets, and database. They might sound a bit dry, but they are the bread and butter organizing your work and data, right? So picture this: you're working on a science project, right? Collecting data on different types of plants. A spreadsheet can take you keep track all of your findings neatly, and then you can turn that data into some kind of charts or graph, right? Animation and drawing and these presentation software, right? And also like web 2 tools, publishing programs, kind of making videos. They are all about getting creative with how you learn and present information, whether you're animating a story, crafting a killer PowerPoint, or even starting your own podcast or YouTube channel for a project. So these tools let you take the driver's seat in your learning journey, right? So imagine a school with all these tools at your disposal, right? It's not just about reading and writing the old school way. It's about creating, sharing, and collaborating in ways that are engaging, fun, and super relevant to the world we live today. From making your own videos to blogging about your latest project or diving deep into research with wikis, learning's got a whole new vibe that's all about connecting, creating, and just plain having a good time while you are at it, right? Alright, let's dive into the world of audio aids and how they jazz up learning, especially when it comes to picking up a new language. Imagine your usual, somewhat boring textbook suddenly coming alive with sounds. That's what happens when we throw audio aids into the mix. Picture this: you're in a class and the teacher hits a play on a cassette player, right? And suddenly it's like there's another person in the room teaching you. It's not just words on a page anymore, right? It's a voice, a melody, a real life connection to what you're trying to learn. Take radios, for example, right? They're like a treasure chest of learning, bringing a whole new dimension to the classroom. R.G. Raymonds was onto something when he said radios are superstar in education. They can beam in a world of knowledge, from news to educational programs, making learning feel like you are just chilling and listening to your favorite station, right? And then there is this podcast, right? They're like the cool modern cousin of radios. Imagine plugging into a podcast about French while jogging or doing dishes, right? It's a game changer for learning languages on the go. Teachers and creators make these podcasts especially for learners, making it feel like you have got a personal tutor in your earbuds, right? And platforms like Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify are your gateways to this world, right? And remember the gramophone also, as some call it, kind of lingaphone, right? It's a classic, right? And just like radios, they bring lessons to life but with a vintage twist. Imagine listening to a French lesson on a gramophone, and it's like traveling back in time while learning, right? Then we have tape recorders or audio cassettes, right? And these have some special place in language learning too. They're like the old school Spotify, giving you the lowdown on pronunciation, vocabulary, and even the rhythm of a language. It's one thing to see a word on a page and another to hear it, right? Feel its tone and repeat after it. Audio CDs, right? They are still kicking around these days, and for good reason. They pack real life conversation and scenario into compact disc, making learning relatable. Picture listening to a CD and hearing a conversation at a French cafe. It's like being there without the airfare, right? And then we have like lingaphone, right? And especially this fancy lingaphone are still doing their thing, helping learners nail down pronunciation. It's like having a pronunciation coach on demand, right? Now let's talk about using telephones and mobiles. These aren't just for TikTok, they are more powerful learning tool. Imagine downloading an app that transforms your phone into a language lab. Speaking of language labs, these places are like the gym for your language muscles, right? Equipped with all the audio and visual gear you need to flex your language skills, whether it's through headsets or in soundproof booths, right? It's an immersive experience that can make learning a new language less daunting and a lot more exciting, right? Let me tell you about the visual support system. Let's dive into how visual aids turn in the classroom into an adventure land of learning, making lessons stick better than super glue. Imagine walking into a class where the teachers not just talking at you but showing you what's up with some eye-catching visuals. That's where the magic happens, right? Visual aids, from flashy slides to cool posters like the superheroes of education, right? They make learning not just fun but super effective too. So then we have, think about those slides, those PowerPoint or Google slides, right? And they can be a game changer, right? Ever sat through a lecture where the teacher uses slides filled with awesome images or animation? It's like the difference between reading a restaurant menu and actually seeing the dishes, right? And slides can turn a snooze fest into a gripping story, especially when they are well designed. Imagine learning about the solar system with slides that take you on a tour from the sun all the way to Pluto, right? Yeah, this Pluto is still counted, right? And it's not just learning, it's an interstellar journey, right? And then we have charts. They're like the secret sauce for making information easy to digest, right? Instead of trying to picture data in your head, a chart lays it out in front of you. It's like comparing your own messy room to a neatly organized one where everything in its place, right? And then we have flashcards, right? And these flashcards are kind of brain's best friends for memorizing stuff, right? Picture this. If you're trying to learn Spanish, one side of the card says pero. You flip it and then there's a picture of a dog. Bam, right? You have got a new word in your vocab arsenal, right? Then we have posters, and these are the classrooms billboards, catching your eyes and making you think, hey, that's kind of pretty cool, right? So they're the silent teachers on the wall, always there to remind you, of the important stuff in a visually appealing way. Now let's not forget about the pictures, right? And these pictures are quite important. Ever heard a picture's worth 1,000 words? Well, it's true. A single snapshot can tell a whole story or explain a complex concept without saying a word, right? It's like scrolling through Instagram to learn about the world. Then we have silent films in class, right? They're like the classic movies of learning, showing, not telling, right? Imagine learning history through a silent film, of the signing of the Declaration of the Independence. It's history coming to life before your eyes, right? And crabs are the unsung heroes for math lovers and also haters, right? They turn confusing numbers into visual stories that actually make sense. Seeing data points on a graph can be the kind of moment for understanding trends and comparison. So the maps, right, they are like your personal tour guide through geography, figuring out the shortest route from your school to the pizza place, right? And that's practical math right there. Then we have mind maps, and which is kind of your brain on paper, literally, right? They help you connect the dots, making learning a web of interconnected ideas rather than a list of forgettable facts. Then we have diagrams, right? And these are the kind of everything from frog anatomy to how a car engine works, right? They break down complex ideas into understandable parts, right? Making you go, wow, now I know that's how this particular machine works, right? Then we have display boards, these are a kind of the classroom highlight reels, right? Picture walking into a classroom and the first thing you see is this vibrant display, bursting with colors and students projects. It's like the Instagram of classroom walls, where kids get to show off their creativity, teamwork, and what they have learned. Think about how a science fair uses display boards, right? Each one tells a story of discovery, complete with eye-catching visuals. For those kids who really get the most out of seeing to believe, these boards are golden, right? They turn abstract concept into something they can literally, see and get excited about. Then we have blackboards, right? And this is our old school stuff that we already discussed in our traditional school age, right? And remember in old movies where the teacher scribbles away on a blackboard with a chalk? That's the vibe. Simple, no fuss, and eco-friendly, since you're not burning through paper or needing plugs and batteries, right? It's the classroom equivalent of a whiteboard cafe, where ideas are constantly breathing and everyone's keeping up with the flow of the lesson, right? Plus, it's allergy friendly, no text smells or sound, just the pure nostalgic scent of chalk dust in the air. Then we have whiteboard, right? Now imagine a classroom that's got something like a giant tablet on the wall, right? That's your online whiteboard. It's where lessons come to life, with the students getting up to draw their answers directly on the screen or playing educational games that make learning feel more like gaming. It's like having a giant iPad where everyone gets to join in on the fun, right? Making those tricky maths formula or historical timelines way more interactive. Then we have pegboard. Ever seen those cool garage walls where all the tools hang up, right? Looking super organized. That's the classroom pegboard for you. But instead of wrenches and hammers, it's used for teaching stuff like biology, right? Imagine hanging up a real life butterfly specimen next to the life cycle chart, right? Giving a student a 3D look into the nature. It's about making learning hands on and super visual, turning theory into something you can almost touch. Then we have magnetic board. These are the superheroes of the boards, ready for anything. Presenting a group project, then stick your notes and picture up with magnets. Need a quick poll, then use magnet dots for votes. It's like having a command center that adapts to the day's mission, whether that's a deep dive into Shakespeare or planning the next class outing. Then we have bulletin board. And what is this? This is where all the important announcements like gold star assignments and upcoming test dates live, right? And it's like the classroom's Facebook, keeping everyone in the loop and showcasing the Hall of Fame for great work. From preschool crabs to high school science fair winners, it's all about celebrating achievements and keeping everyone informed and engaged, right? And then we have projectors, right? And they are very important, right? But before that, let me tell you about the flanner board or felt board. What are these? Picture a board That's like a stage for felt characters where stories come to life, right? Little ones can move around colorful shapes to tell their own stories, from fairy tales to adventure in outer space, right? It's a mix of art class meets storytelling R, where the only limit is their imagination. Then we have projectors, right? And these are kind of fancy gadgets teachers used to show us stuff in class. Projectors and their techie cousins. So imagine you're sitting in a class and instead of squinting at a tiny textbook or trying to decode your teacher's handwriting on the board, there is this big bright image right in front of you. That's the magic of projector. They make everything big and clear so that even the folks at the back can see what's going on. First up, we have got the classic projector. It's like the teacher's superhero tool for making PowerPoint slides or even class notes pop off of the screen. It's super helpful because you can actually see what's important and scribble down notes without guessing. Think of it like watching a movie trailer. It gives you the best bits so you know what to expect. So these projectors basically make your computer screen go surprise so everyone in the room can get a good look. So when you're picking one out, it's like choosing a new phone. You gotta check out what it can do. There are a bunch of types like DLP, LCD, LED, all these stuff. So each has its own cool features. Whether you're setting up a cinema in your living room or making history class less of a snooze fest, right? Let's talk about smart projector. So this bad boy is like having a mini computer that can do its own thing. Right, it's got Android, Wi-Fi, and even a browser. Imagine being able to pull up YouTube videos or educational games without tripping over wires or fumbling with your laptop, right? So teachers can zap information to the screen wirelessly, right? Making classes more like those interactive YouTube tutorials we love. Right, and then we have overhead projector, and this is a kind of old school but still cool, right? It's like putting a tiny picture or document under a magnifying glass and showing it off to the whole room. Great for when you want to show something hands-on like a map or a science diagram. And don't forget about the analog projects. It's pretty much the same as the overhead one, but it deserves a shout out for being a reliable classic. It uses those clear plastic sheets you can draw on print or remember, right? And remember when your teacher drew that hilarious bad frog on one to explain biology. So all this is also important. So in real life, think about how you use a projector to level up a movie night with friends, turning your living room into a mini theater, or when teacher used them to bring boring textbook stuff to life with videos and animation. Let's dive into the world of audiovisual aids, those cool tools that make learning not just more fun but super effective too. Let's dive into the world of audiovisual aids, those cool tools that make learning not just more fun but super effective too. Think about it. When was the last time you found yourself totally engrossed in a video or a catchy tune and realized you were actually learning something new? Right, and that's the magic of using stuff like videos, music, right, flip charts or slideshows, and even overhead projectors in the classroom. But it's not all about ditching the traditional teaching methods altogether, right? It's more like spicing things up by mixing in these aids here and there to keep everyone on their toes and the info sticking in our brains. So remember the old school film strips from the 80s. Right, those were the days before DVDs and online streaming took over, and teachers loved them. You know why? Because they were easy to use and didn't break the bank. Imagine sitting in a darkened room watching a story unfold frame by frame. That was a big deal back then for making learning visually appealing. Now let's talk about music clips. Right, ever noticed how you can remember the lyrics to countless songs without even trying, but struggle to memorize historical dates? Music has this unique power to make things stick. For instance, there are songs out of that can teach you about the skeleton system or even help you nail down the complexities of the food chain through catchy mnemonics. Then we have videos, right? They bring topics to life, making even the driest subject matter interesting. Think about watching a documentary on the solar system versus reading about it. Seeing those planets in motion can be a game changer for understanding, right? Then we have flip charts, right? And that might seem a bit old fashioned, but they are incredibly versatile. Picture a teacher flipping through pages, each revealing a new part of the lesson, or students coming up to draw their answers, right? It's interactive, it's visual, and it definitely kind of beats staring at a text box, right? And then we have slideshows, and what is that? Courtesy of our projectors or PowerPoint, can turn a lesson into a visual journey. They're perfect for breaking down complex information into digestible bits with images, charts, and bullet points. It's like watching a movie where each slide is a scene contributing to the bigger story. Then we have overhead projector that we already talked, right? And it is kind of cool way of making everyone feel involved. Watching a teacher lay down transparency and write on them in real time, right? And that is kind of captivating, right? Then we have cartoons, and cartoons and animation take learning to a whole new level of fun. They can simplify tricky concepts, making them accessible and entertaining. Imagine learning about historical events through animated characters, right? Then we have doodles, right? Or scribbles. Might look like mindless drawing, but they're actually powerful learning tool. They help visualize thoughts and concept, making abstract ideas a lot more tangible. Plus, they are a testament to the fact that sometimes the best idea come from doodling on the margins of your notebook, right? Then at the end we have like television. And what is that thing? Well, television, and then we have YouTube. They have transformed the educational landscape by offering a vast array of learning material at our fingertips, from historical documentaries to science channels, right? These platforms make learning flexible, allowing you to explore topics that catch your fancy at your own pace, right? Now let me tell you about the activity aids, right? Think about those field trips as your favorite school day ever, right? You're not stuck in classroom. Instead, you're out there in real life, seeing, touching, and experiencing things firsthand. Imagine going to a science museum and getting to launch a water rocket or explore a kind of planetarium. Right, that's not just fun, it's learning in a disguise, guys. You are soaking up knowledge about physics, astronomy, and more, all without flipping through a textbook. Field trips are like the secret sauce in education. They make learning stick because you're living it, not just hearing about it, right? Now, on to experiments. Picture yourself in a lab coat with goggle, right? Mixing chemical to see if they fizz, change colors, or explode. That's science in action, right? It's one thing to read about chemical reaction, and it's another to see them bubbling up right in front of you. Experiment turn the abstract into the concrete, right? And have you ever made a volcano for a science fair? Then you have experienced how experiments can make the mysteries of the earth tangible, teaching you why volcanoes erupt without needing to visit one, right? All right, let's dive into the world of 3D aids, which is honestly just a fancy word talking about all the tools, tangible stuff we use to learn about the world in more hands-on way. Imagine holding a mini version of Eiffel Tower in your hand, or using a globe to plan your dream trip. These are 3D aids, and they are like the VIPs of learning tools because they bring concept to life right before your eyes, right? And first off, we have got models in 3D. Think of these as the action figures of academic world. Instead of a Spider-Man, you might have a model of the human heart for biology class, right? These understand how things look and work in 3 dimensions. For instance, architects use 3D models to preview how buildings will look, and game designers use them to create your favorite video game characters, right? Then there are objects, and these could be as simple as collection of rocks for a geology class, or a set of geometric shapes that help kindergarten student to understand the concept of volume, right? And have you ever held a seashell or a dinosaur bone? That's learning with real objects, right? Taking stuff out of the world and bringing it into the classroom for us to see and touch, right? Then we have specimens, right? And they are quite important because these are like the ambassador of the species or type. It's like having a piece of coral or a butterfly in a display case, right? They represent their whole group. Science teachers use specimens to show what insects or minerals look like a little bit closer, right? Which is a way cooler than just seeing them in a book. Then we have mock-ups. They look like the real deal but don't work like them. Engineers and designers use mock-ups to test design before making the real thing. For example, a car designer might use a mock-up to change out the body design without worrying about the engine or other parts, right? And next we have diorama, and these are like little snapshots of life captured in a box, right? Remember creating a mini rainforest in shoebox for a school project? That's a diorama, and they tell a story or show a scene like miniature version of habitat, which can make learning about ecosystem or historical events much more interesting, right? And then we have like puppets, right? And they are not just for kids show, right? Puppets have been used for centuries to tell stories, teach lessons, and even spread messages about social change. Then we have globe, and it is probably one of the most well-known 3D. It's the earth in miniature, letting you spin the whole world with your hands. It's not just for geography, it's a visual aid to understand earth science, environment, zone, and even global politics, right? And at the end we have like exhibition and museums. They are where all kids of 3D aids come together to show off what students have learned or to display collections that tell the story of our world, from history to science, art, right? Walking through a museum is like going on a treasure hunt through time and space, discovering ancient artifacts, priceless artworks and innovation that change the world, right? Next, let me tell you about the virtual reality, right? So imagine popping up on a VR headset in class and suddenly you're walking through the ancient streets of Rome or diving into the human bloodstream to see how cells work. That's the magic of virtual reality in education. It's like a field trip without leaving your desk. Every student gets their own virtual world to explore, and teachers can keep an eye on what everyone's is up to, right? It's a game changer for making tough subjects easier to understand. Instead of snoozing through a textbook, you can actually be there in the middle of the action, whether it's the surface of Mars or inside a Shakespeare's play, right? For example, think about learning about the solar system. With VR, you are not just staring at pictures of planet, you are flying past Jupiter, watching its moon in orbit, right? Feeling like a space explorer. It turns learning into an adventure. Let's talk about how augmented reality and virtual reality videos and games take learning to the next level. So in college, these tools can turn abstract stuff like quantum physics into a hands-on experience where you can mess around with atoms in a virtual lab without any risk of blowing something up, right? Imagine a medical student, practicing surgery in VR. They get all the practice without the oops moment on real patient, right? So augmented reality in education is like having a magic book. Imagine pointing your phone at a textbook image and it jumps out in 3D right in front of you. Teachers are using AR to make learning more interactive, turning dull diagram into exciting interactive 3D models. Instead of reading about DNA, you can see it snipping in front of you. Zoom in and understand how it works in real life, right? It's also making learning more accessible, right? Who needs a heavy backpack full of books when all your study material can be on your phone, ready to turn into a virtual lesson on demand, right? And it's not just for the science crowd, right? Art student can create in 3D spaces. Historians can walk through historical sites, and tech students can dismantle engines and gadgets all virtually. Plus, AR games can make learning about current events or historical figures feel like you're a part of the story. So let me tell you, artificial intelligence, right, especially in education, is like having a super smart assistant for teachers, right? Grading papers, AI has it covered, right? Which means teachers have more time to actually teach. Imagine an AI system that can check your essay in seconds and give you feedback how to improve. That's happening right now. And it's not just about saving time. AI can figure out where students are struggling and suggest personalized tips to help them get better, right? So think of it like a video game where the game adapts to how well you're playing. If you're acing it, the challenges get tougher. If you're struggling, it offers hints, right? AI in education works the same way, making sure everyone gets the support they need to ace the game of learning. So guys, that's all for today. In our next session, we're going to talk about evaluation system, which will be our last session on unit first, teaching aptitude, right? And it's quite important because in exam they ask one question based on that. So in that perspective, the next session is quite important that you would not want to miss it. So I'll see you in our next session.